Dr. Parnell, welcome to the Doctor Nurse Podcast. I am so happy to have you on today. Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. And Terry's fine.
Terri. Okay, cool. So Terri, let's dive right in. Tell me a little bit about what your current job title is these days. What do you do for a living?
Right now, actually, I've recently launched my second business, and it's called TAP Wellness Coaching. So I'm the founder and principal of that. And that is health and wellness coaching, specifically for nurses and other healthcare professionals. And it's virtual coaching, and it was something I felt the need to do to give back to the nursing profession.
You said you have two jobs. So that's one job, or is there something else?
2014, I'm sorry. I had launched my first business after leaving the more traditional nursing role in a large integrated healthcare system. I was a vice president over many hospitals, working in the health literacy, diversity, language access services, communication, and meeting people where they are and providing services that meet their needs. That's been a big passion of mine since I became a nurse. I did that for years. I was in that organization for almost 35 years in many different roles and was really doing my role. I created the position after many years of bugging and nudging. And finally, we launched an office to do that, myself with a physician. And it was amazing. And then after several years of doing that and being successful and really changing the culture of the organization, I said, I want to do this on my own. So I took the leap and in 2014 and left and started my own health literacy consulting business. So I worked mostly, I'd say, with organizations, hospitals, healthcare systems, for-profit, not-for-profit, pharmaceutical companies, all kinds of industries that are in healthcare, and work to educate and train healthcare professionals about health literacy and really the depth and the breadth of what health literacy truly is. So then, and then COVID came and I had some medical issues. And then I said, I have a lot of family that's in healthcare. And even though I wasn't at the bedside during COVID, we have 9 or 10 immediate family members that are physicians, nurses, or nurse practitioners. So I saw what everybody was going through. My husband also is a physician. And I said, I want to give back to nurses, and something I've been toying with, but that was the push I needed to then finally launch this business. Yeah. Yes, it's my second business.
Oh my goodness. This is incredible. So
I love it.
Yeah. So for the layman that's hearing health literacy and they're like, what does that mean? Health literacy. Can you just kind of briefly describe what it is? Because that's a pretty big chunk of your career. And I'm sure it plays into your coaching business as well.
It does. It's really the ability for somebody to be able to read or hear or understand health information in a way that they can take action and really get it the first time you're speaking with them. It's not using medical terms.
Jargon.
Right. It's using lay terms. But everyone thinks it's just verbal communication, but actually it's written communication. And that includes things, I did things like looking at signage in buildings and all the digital screens that are in hospitals or in the garages when people park, and how people navigate and access services. So it's like environmental also. I mean, I've put on construction hats on a construction site as a nurse and walked through, and we kind of talked about where signs should go and the flow, and all of that is part of it. So it's verbal, it's communication, it's written communication, but it's also the environment. And all of those things can make it more understandable and accessible for people to really utilize the information that they're given. We need to meet people where they're at. It's not about me, it's about them. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And it touches on everything. That's what I love about it.
That is so cool. I'm getting this picture that you're like a translator. You translate medical jargon into terms and into concepts that people can grasp, because the average patient, I think, has like a 5th grade reading, like fifth grade comprehension or fifth grade reading level. I can't remember the exact stats on it, but it's definitely way less than you originally think that people are understanding and comprehending what we're saying when we're talking to them in these terms.
And it's so much more. Everyone, I won't say everyone, but the majority of people tend to feel that this only affects people who are not as educated as others, or who don't speak English as their primary language. And that's not the case. It really is for everybody. And my message has always been, if you design written material or you speak in a way that is proper and understandable, everyone will be able. It's good for everybody. So, I mean, I'm educated, but if I go into, I bring the car in to the car dealer, and I always say, tell me this, tell me that. And then I always try to feel like I don't know, it's a control thing, I guess. I'm like, oh, and I want to see all the parts that you took out. Can you just leave them? And they go, oh, sure. But to be very honest, Andrew, I don't know what those parts are. But it's just like this thing. And my husband says, what are you doing? I just feel like they might, I don't understand what they're saying. So it's the same thing. It's just a different language. And I can be very well educated, but I don't understand car talk or whatever the example may be. So it applies to everybody, not just those that are not educated.
Yes, well said. I actually had in my mind to use the car talk as well, because again, I mean, I don't ask for my parts to come out. That's pretty funny. I think I might start doing that, but I do. I'm like, tell me what you're doing.
Like, well, I don't know what this is. It could be some other type of car parts. I wouldn't know, but
let me see my parts. Yeah, that's so funny. That's hilarious. Well, Terri, let's keep going and let's just hear about how you got to this specific spot in your career, because it's so really incredible that you've got this health literacy background, but you're also now stepping into the lives of other healthcare professionals, and you're helping to translate this world for them, right? This new COVID world, this post-pandemic world of healthcare, and learning how to balance everything in the mix. And kind of tell me how you got to this specific spot in your career, because one of the things I found that nurses have such an array of backgrounds before they move into their whatever phase they're in. And we don't really talk about it. We don't really think that that stuff is relevant, but it is. It's very interesting to hear where they have come and to where they are now. So yeah, do you mind just kind of walking us through briefly, like how you got going and how you, again, kind of found this niche that you're in?
You want me to just give a high level overview from my career journey?
Yeah. So like from when you decided to become a nurse, like that moment that you were like, I think I'm going to go do this. And then
it's funny. I was just thinking of that the other day, actually, ironically, but I don't know. I always felt like I always wanted to be a nurse. I don't know why. It was honestly, it was a nurse or an artist. Those were my two things. I'm very creative. And I remember I had family that lived in Greenwich Village, New York, and I love Greenwich Village. And we would go in often, and I just love the diversity, and it's just a great environment. And I'm talking years ago. And I would go, and my parents would see all the struggling artists in the Washington Square Park or wherever, and I'd say, yeah, I'm going to be an artist or a nurse. And all my art teachers were like, oh, this is great. Yes, this is good. And I think they were just like, why don't you be a nurse? I think they were afraid I would be struggling too much, but I kind of can incorporate a lot of that anyway into nursing. And then I did decide nobody really in my family was in nursing. I had an aunt who was a nurse, but we weren't like close. So I just always wanted to do those things. So I went into nursing school. Of course, I chose a school in Greenwich Village. My grandparents worked, honestly, in St. Vincent's Hospital in Greenwich Village, which has now closed, and they helped run the hospital. And so we used to go visit them all the time. So I was at a very young age, I was always brought into the hospital to visit, and I knew a lot of the people there, and I think it just made me feel comfortable. So fast forward, that was a diploma program. I'm really aging myself. So I did the 3-year diploma program and came out and worked right in a surgical intensive care unit as a new grad, because you could do that after a 3-year program where they used to wake you up at night to cover shifts, and it was crazy. But I mean, I had got an amazing education and I loved it. So then came back out of the city to more Long Island. and took another job in the health system. I said I would stay for a year, and that's where I ended up being for almost 35 years. But in so many different roles. So just to sum all that up, I was a bedside nurse, I was a manager, I was a nurse educator, I was a patient educator. And then I had to figure out, what do I want to do now, right? And all that time I went back and got my bachelor's, got my master's, ultimately went back and got my doctorate, my DNP. And when I graduated nursing school, actually I graduated nursing school, so I think it's pretty cool, from St. Patrick's Cathedral. That was where our graduation ceremony was.
It's beautiful.
And yeah, it was beautiful. And I remember leaving the ceremony and I was out front, and I remember telling my grandmother that I was so excited and so proud. And I said, one day I'm going to get my doctorate. And I was a diploma graduate. I was like 20 years old. I said, and I'm going to write a book one day. And I remember them looking at me and going, yeah, that's nice. And yeah, patting me. That's great. You're all excited. And I did that. That was my trajectory. So I ended up along the way, keep going for my education so that I could get to that point. And I was a vice president in a health system that at the time was like 18 hospitals. And I developed almost like a service line approach to health literacy, language, culture, health equity. And we rolled that out across the 18 hospitals. And it was the best thing. I loved it. We really were changing how employees and healthcare workers viewed all of those things. And we really integrated it so it was sustainable. It wasn't just the flavor of the month that we're so accustomed to. And around, I guess, fast forward to 2010, I wrote my first book. And then...
What did you write your first book on?
Well, 2010, I wrote a book with a colleague on cardiac heart.
So not health literacy. You weren't on health literacy.
No, I was doing health literacy. The two of us, my clinical subspecialty was always cardiac. So cardiac, open heart surgery, cardiology, but more the surgical side. And then 2014, I wrote my first health literacy book, which won an American Journal Book of the Year award, which was pretty cool. And that was fun. And then I've co-authored 2 other books in palliative care and communication. I think they were published in 2020. Love to write, many journal articles, white papers, chapters, things like that, which I don't tell to many people because they look at you like, really? You don't like to?
No, I think that's amazing.
Yeah. And then 2016, I got my FAAN. I became a fellow in the American Academy of Nursing, which that was like a lifelong dream. And yeah. So, and then just recently this year, I launched this business. So I think that's a
beautiful journey.
It was a little long-winded, but yeah.
No, it's perfect.
My love for prevention and wellness, which I believe was part of that question, really came from living in Greenwich Village in those early nursing school days. And health literacy, prevention is such a big part of health literacy. So they are kind of all interwoven. And that was why I went and became an integrative therapist because of all the preventative and combining Eastern and Western medicine. And we used to bring that into the patients. And in those days in nursing school, we used to go, I can't believe it now. When I think about it, myself and another nursing student, the 2 of us with our little bag would go into, they were called SROs. They were single room occupancy, like hotels almost, where people in the city lived. So it was like all these gentlemen just had their own room, and it was like a dorm style. And we would go in our little uniforms walking into this environment. But I loved it because, you had to deal with a lot, but when you were talking about diabetes or you're talking about heart failure, you could open the fridge or you could talk to them and see, tell me what you're eating and tell me, did you weigh yourself? Do they have a scale? So you really were able to be in the patient's environment and really help them better take care of themselves and educate them in a way that meets their needs. And I really think that's where all of the effective communication and meeting people where they are and the prevention and wellness really started. And then it's just, I became the integrative therapist. I did a program with Donna Karen and Urban Zen. And then several years ago, I became a certified wellness coach through Terri Ann program. Yeah. So to me, it's all related.
Related. Yeah. I always find it interesting that, and I always ask this question because people are like, oh, you want me to hear? But what you don't realize is the journey. That's really what I want more nurses to hear, is that everyone thinks that like you knew what you were going to do the moment you got out of school, or, I mean, even though you did, but like,
so you don't, no, but you don't, like, you don't,
no.
But I think nursing is such an agile career. And that's what I think. I mean, we know that, but I didn't know that. Starting, honestly.
Yeah.
But
I just think it's very interesting that whenever you step out and you set off in your career and you might go in one trajectory, you just don't know where you're going to end up. And I think that journey is super beautiful. It needs to be celebrated a little bit more, because I think physicians, when they pick a specialty, they have to stay there, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas nurses really don't. We have that ability to move into different areas. And so as you hear, I think that provides a little bit of confusion when you first come out. But I think that as you start to learn about who you are and what triggers you, what pulls you, what makes you feel like you're making a difference, you begin to shape and cultivate your career. And that's what I think is kind of that art in nursing, and kind of like you're describing that creative side, that we have such creative license in our field that it needs to be celebrated. Because as we see, like, wow, like, yes, she knew she was going to become a doctor. She knew she was going to write books. Well, she knew that, but you didn't know that.
What does a young kid know? But like, I was just so in love with the nursing profession. I wanted to contribute back. I wanted to give back to the profession. I wanted to reach the highest level if I could in the profession.
Yes.
It was a big dream, but
it was beautiful.
Along the way, I think what's important for nurses is that, honestly, every year, I still do it to this day. Every year I have personal goals that I set, and it doesn't have to be January. Actually, it could be September. It could be your birthday month, but
it could be today. Just pick a day. Yeah.
But then every year that time, just do it. And I sit down and I pick 2 or 3 personal goals and 2 or 3 professional goals. And often they help each other. It could be, and I mean, it started with, I'd like to try to write a journal article. Like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I mean, you just say, okay. And each year you just push yourself a little out of your comfort zone or something new. Here you are years later.
I love that. I think it's it's that forward thinking. One of the things that I've noticed, and kind of a theme throughout nurses that have really accomplished a lot with their careers, is they have this forward thinking. They're setting goals. They're thinking about the future. And again, when you read books about people that have had high levels of achievement in their careers, there are people that are setting goals, attainable goals, and they are keeping themselves accountable to those goals and looking at them and understanding, what is it that I need to do to get to these realistic, attainable goals? And then again, starting small, like you said, it doesn't need to be, I'm going to write a book today. It's, I'm going to write a journal article and I'm going to see how that goes,
like,
and take those steps.
Find someone who's published and say, can I co-write it with you? And you learn. Then it's baby steps. And the same thing in health and wellness. Honestly, it's picking small, achievable goals one at a time and building on that. You're not going to go out and walk 3 miles if you're not walking, 2,000
exactly
steps.
One.
So it's the same mentality. It's the same principle. Holding yourself accountable is so important,
And I think it's interesting too, because you've done that in your career, and through doing that in your career, now you can go back and help other people that might be struggling. That might be like, I don't know how to get started. Like, where do I start? And that's how your health coaching has now integrated these last 35, 40 years of nursing, that now you can pivot into another role and now go, hey, listen, I got really good at setting goals and accomplishing them. I want to help others in that same facet, in that same vein. And I think that's wonderful. Like, that you are able to, again, learn certain skills and then take those skills and figure out how to help others with it and provide a service. I just think that's incredible. And I want more nurses to open up their eyes to what are the things that you are naturally good at, the things that you are naturally passionate about, and then move into that. And eventually you might find that might be the thing that calls to you more so than anything else that you're doing in your career, especially if you're burned out.
Exactly. What makes your heart sing? What part? You may not like the role that you're in at the moment in nursing, but what parts of it do you like? Or I always think back to remember when you had a good feeling. What did that feel like, right? And so what was it about that made you feel that way? And how can we get that feeling back again? Sometimes we're so trapped or we have blinders because we're feeling so intensely what we're feeling at the moment that we have to kind of step back. And that's really hard to do because everyone's busy. So they can't step back and find time just to kind of decompress and reboot and refresh and think, okay, what can I do? There's a lot of pressure on many people, not just nurses right now. So it does takes courage, and you have to prioritize it, which is sometimes hard to do.
Yeah. So this book I've been reading by Brian Tracy, it's called Something Achievement, What to Learn from the Most Successful People in the World, I can't remember the title. I've literally got it in my car right now. Anyway, so I'm reading this book by Brian Tracy on achievement. He talks about getting away for an hour and spending an hour in silence. And I was like, an hour? This guy's crazy. Who has time for that? Like, is he a mother? Does he have a job? Like, I was thinking about it, and he goes, and if you're saying right now, who has time for that? And I was like, yes, we are, Brian Tracy. He's like, you need to be doing it even more. And I was like, oh my goodness. So again, like what you're describing, that getting away, that processing, even if you can't do an hour, try 30 minutes. I hope you guys are enjoying the episode. I want to take a break and remind you guys to check out the resources on the Dr. Nurse Podcast website. I have blogs, Etsy shop, free resources for nurses who want to start a side hustle or hear things that I wish I knew before I became a nurse. Listen to all the other podcast episodes I put on my website. Check it out. Now, let's get back to the content.
I was just going to say, an hour can be overwhelming. I would even say start with 10 minutes. Every morning, my kids kind of tease me, but my husband, but every morning he'll say, oh, we get up, I have my routine. And I'm a big believer in setting yourself up for success, right? I'm always like, that's just how I do everything, which is it's a plus and a minus for some people who are living. But I'm like, he'll say, I'll make the bed. And I'll be like, no, don't make the bed. I make the bed. And he's like, I can make the bed. And I'm like, no, I do my 10 minutes of meditation when I'm making the bed. To me, it's it's meditative. You pull this up, you walk around. It's like you walk. It's almost like when you're walking in a labyrinth. Yeah. So I said, that's my 10 minutes of meditation. Please do not take that away from me. And that's how I start the day. He thinks that he wants to help. I'll make the bed. And I'm like, no, but like that's how I set myself up. There are certain things that I do for me. And I'm not saying everyone will find it, but just 10 minutes, but I'll do 10 minutes of that every day. If you tell me how to sit for an hour, I would struggle with that. Yeah. So,
yeah, no, for sure. And again, I don't think that he's wrong, because it is the theme in every single highly successful person that I've read. Tony Robbins, Dale Carnegie, all these huge powerhouses. And they all talk about like getting alone and spending time alone. And another book that I like is Deep Work, which is, I can't remember the title of that book, but Deep Work is another book that I love. Talks about the most successful people are the people that get away from everyone and they go do deep work. And the only way you can do deep work is in silence. And so again, it's just this common theme of just being alone, and yet we are now more wired and tuned in and tucked in, and so it detracts from what you can do for yourself. And so that's something that I always talk about on my podcast, like get away from everything, leave your phone, get up an hour early. And that's what he talks about, getting up an hour early if that's what you need to do, but going to bed early. So you just it's discipline. It's a discipline, it's the routine, it's the commitment to your goals. And also I found putting your goals in places where you can see them, and you walk past them. I have a vision board that I walk past all the time, and I'm like,
I love vision boards. Yes.
They just provide that for you.
It's amazing how that can come to fruition. It's all mindset, not all, but a lot of it is mindset and your expectations of yourself. And it's not easy, but it's small steps along the way can certainly get you there.
I agree.
Yeah.
So along your way, and one of the questions I like to ask is about a challenge in your career or a time that you felt like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to accomplish this, or I don't, because I don't want people to think you've been handed everything. You've had to work for everything you've had. And so that's one of the things that I just resist. I resist feeling like we're victims and we can't have things, or that things have been handed to us and we haven't had to work for them. So I like to touch on a time, and we've all had them, of challenges that we thought, okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. And then you were able to overcome, and how you overcame, because I think that's all that life is just challenges and overcoming them. And that makes you strong and resilient.
Exactly.
And we talked a little bit about resiliency earlier before the podcast. So yeah, anything that you remember along your career, your long career?
I don't look at writing a book or achieving a degree necessarily as a challenge, because in my thinking, I chose to do that and on my journey. But I did have, there were many other challenges. And I think sometimes people think those are the challenges. It's getting that other degree, or it's choosing to step out of the comfort zone. But for me, in all honesty, I guess it was when I became a single parent, when my kids were young. They were 10 and 6, I think it was. And I was in school going for my degree. My dad was newly diagnosed with a difficult illness. I was writing the book. It was just like a lot of balls in the air. So I think for me at that point, that was I had personal changes going on in my life. At the same time, I had professional changes going on. And at the same time, I was trying to continue on those goals that I had set for that year to get to the next step. So I think that was challenging for me. But
wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, but it's like one day at a time. And like you said, it just helps to make you stronger. Maybe not ironically, my husband and I have 6 children together. My 2 children are both nurses. My son and my daughter are both nurses. So how is that? It's just like, that was not my plan, but, and I don't know, after they used to tease me with how hard we work and what we do. They were like, no, we're not. And they're both nurses. So, and love it. And I have a son-in-law who's a nurse. I have a daughter-in-law who's a nurse. Another daughter-in-law is an NP. I have 2 sister-in-laws that are nurses. My husband's a physician. We have a son that's a physician. It's just like, our dinner conversations are quite interesting. But I guess to answer that question, it was that challenge of doing
being on
that.
your own. Yeah.
But
and one of the things I like to point this out, because I think women take the lion's share of childcare, and it's just something about our role, right? It's just the way that life is. And I know there's a lot of people try to push back and say, oh, it's equal, but it's not equal, and it's never going to be equal. And to be in the role of now primary caregiver, and now you're solo primary caregiver, and to hold the family together, knowing that you've got to be strong, and you have 2 little babies that clearly looked up to you and were looking at what you were doing and admiring your career and what you were providing for them. It is very inspiring to hear that even as you are facing having to provide for yourself completely and 2 little babies, and then also provide a home that they felt safe, and all the different things that you had to do.
Right?
Yeah, there's so much. But, it's not just the work or the keeping it all going.
I had a supportive family, but it is, I remember drive home, you circle the corner, you pull up into the driveway, and it's all you. It's like, there you are. Yeah. But my kids tease me. They're both excellent cooks also. And they say it's because I was always a little too busy to cook when they wanted to eat. So it has a lot of pluses to it.
Yes. Well, that's very sweet. Thank you for sharing that. And one of the other questions I like to ask is any mentorship. And so one of the things that I like to hear, and I feel a lot of nurses in their careers lack mentors, that there's kind of not this like system of support. And I think being in the position that you were in, the vice president position, it's tough being at the top, right? And so did you have any mentors as you got there, or did you find that mentorship was something that you noticed was lacking?
So that's interesting, because I always, and as I've mentored nurses along my career path, I've always feel that we have mentors, 2 different kinds. I think there's mentors where we admire, or we can take pieces of what we feel are wonderful things that they encompass in their career or in their leadership style, or depending on the role. And that's wonderful. And I think, though, for me, I've learned even more from the mentors that I said, I definitely do not want to be a leader in that way, or or I don't. There were things that might occur that I would say, that's not for me. That's not how I want to do that, for sure. Not necessarily right or wrong, just didn't fit for me and my personality and my leadership style, I guess. So I think that's really valuable. It's like that saying, sometimes we learn more from our mistakes than we do from our successes. And not that any of that is a mistake, but sometimes I learned more from the people that I watched from afar or that I collaborated with, that I could say, wow, that doesn't fit for me. Works for them. They're very successful, doing great, but I learned a lot on both sides. So I think you could have at least two different kinds of mentors, probably more.
That's good.
You know?
Yeah, I like that. That's a good answer to that question. I don't think anyone's ever given it. I like that.
Oh.
And what advice would you have? What advice do you have for, if you could go back to Terri that day graduating when she's talking to her grandmother about all the things she wants to do? What would you tell her if you could go back, knowing what you today? What would you go back and tell her as a piece of advice that you would tell her to keep? So, Terri, don't you forget this. And then a piece of advice you would tell her, don't you listen to this. This is garbage. And you would tell her to toss it.
Oh, gosh, that's tough. I think a piece of advice for nurses.
Yeah, or if you can extrapolate it out to nurses. I just like to make it like personal to where you can remember, like, I could go back to that girl and tell her.
Personally, I have a little motto in my head often. It's find a way. Find a way. I wish I remember where I heard that. It's probably within the last couple of years I heard that. So my thing, I say it, I think it, find a way. So there's a way. If there's something that's important to you, it's calling you, it's something you've always wanted to do and you haven't done it, find a way. I think, so that's my general advice. If it's something that is looking to achieve something or looking at their career or where to, or in life in general, do that thing.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Find a way, figure it out.
And for nurses.
Okay, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
Nurses, I think what I didn't know when I was younger that I wish I knew is that there's so many, I didn't know of all the opportunities that there were in nursing. I had no clue, honestly. I thought I was just going to be a bedside, not just, but I would start as a bedside nurse and then just stay in that role. And many people do. I have colleagues that are still doing that. And it's such a valuable role and so needed and so important. I think that for me, every few years, I found that I like to change and either grow and do something or just zig and zag a little bit just to learn new things. Yeah. Some of it was forced upon me and some of it I chose. But I always looked at it as an opportunity to learn, even if I went kicking and screaming a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely am obsessed with what you just said because of the fact that that's the premise of my podcast, is that I want people to see what's out there, which is another reason why I love when people share what they did along their career, because I know they think it's this humdrum question. But when you hear all the things that you did to get to where you are, you realize like, whoa, she did nurse manager. So like, what if I became a nurse manager for like just a year and I did that? And then like, I got exposed to this job and then I like learned how to do that. And so that's the point. Yeah. Like,
say to family, my kids, whatever, do it. Take that. It's not a lifelong, if it's something you think you want to do now, because they'll think, oh, I don't know if this will be good, if in a few years this or that. I'm like, it's not forever. You could make your commitment, you do it well, learn as much as you can, and then take it from there. Take that first step and take it from there. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's so much more easier for nurses to do that than physicians. And I really think that nurses need to take advantage of that fact. If you are unhappy, miserable, you don't like what you're doing, it's time to do something else, because we have way too many options to be miserable. And you've got way too many things that you can explore and figure out what you can do. And again, the premise of my podcast is like, come see what you can do. Like, come meet people that are doing really cool stuff so that you can carve out your own career. It doesn't have to look like Terri's career. It just needs to look like yours. But if you don't know what's out there, kind of like what you're saying, I would go back and tell her like there's so much you can do. Just like open your eyes and
Right.
be looking everywhere. And so if somebody shows you these different windows, you can look in and peer and go, oh, I didn't even know that was a window. I didn't even know that was there. So you
Right.
never are desperate. You never are concerned. I mean, that's how I feel about my job now. I'm like, if I don't want to do this, I've got options to do anything else at any point. And when you have that in your mindset, again, mindset, going back to that mindset of
Yes.
unlimited opportunities, unlimited options, as long as I'm not like a problem at my job. Okay. Like if you're a problem, you're a problem. But like, as long as you're not a problem,
Right.
you will more than likely be able to move into any area and set up your life for what you want it to be.
It's true. I do think I don't want to gloss over how challenging that can be for people who are in a situation where they don't. I mean, I'm all a big proponent of like doing what we can individually, right? So that we have a good mindset, so that we show up our best selves, so that we slept well, we're taking care of ourselves, nutritional. And that's why part of the coaching, wellness coaching program that I have incorporates building resilience and practicing self-care, because that's such an important part for nursing in particular. But I realize that if you even do all that and you show up at work and they don't feel like they're being compensated well enough, or you're not being treated with respect, or you don't have safe patient nurse ratios, it's challenging for them to step back. But maybe that's not the place for them. And I know it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. It's not. But do everything that you can individually. Coaching is not a magic wand. Okay, it's not going to fix everything, but you can improve and better yourself and try to establish, I don't like work-life balance, but that term so much, but I call it harmony, work-life harmony. So how can we live in that harmonious place where we're not like all in nursing 150%, then we come home, we're 150% in whatever our responsibilities may be at home. But how can we find that harmonious way that we could live, so that then we could step back and think, what's my next step, right? Or is this the best place, or things like that? Because when you're in it knee deep, it's hard. It is hard. It's really hard. So
to have a coach help you create a game plan, right? Because that's what coaches do on the sidelines, right? Of the football team. And that's what they come up with a game plan. They show you, okay, so if he's going to go left, you're going to go right. Then they're going to take the ball, you're going to throw it down. And so this kind of helps you kind of go like, okay, so we're going to start first with nutrition. We're going to make sure you're eating the right things, because your brain doesn't work right. Your blood sugars are going to be all over the place. We know that blood sugars directly affect your mood. They're going to affect. So if they clean up your diet and then all of a sudden you go to work, you're like, I'm not that depressed anymore because I cleaned up my diet. It's like, okay, that was the move. It was a Hail Mary pass and it worked.
And everyone's different, right? Some people it is food. Some people, we start with sleep. Some people, everyone has a different place where they need to start. So that, and it is, you're correct, then it's contagious, because then you invested in that and you start feeling the benefits of it. And then you look at other things around you that you can start. Then you have an interest to want to do that, and it becomes contagious.
Yeah. So one of the things I want to touch on before we get out and we go into the rapid fire questions, which is the last part, is that you have an app. You've developed an app that for your coaching that I want people to check out and download and stuff like that. So tell us a little bit about your app, and then we'll go into the last part of the interview.
Yeah. So it's I call it the TAP app. It's TAP Wellness Coaching. It's on Google Play and Apple. And I worked with an app developer. Obviously, I am not that technologically savvy at all. So I felt it was important. I know there's many apps out there where you can get inspirational messages or nutrition or nudging and different things every day. My app is similar to that, but the difference is the daily messages that you get are geared specifically to nurses and healthcare professionals. So it's not, I mean, there's a few, you will get some general messages, but it talks about things that nurses and healthcare professionals are dealing with. So when we talk about sleep, we talk about, are you on the night shift or are you on the day shift? When we talk about building resilience, we talk about, did you work 3 12s in a row this week? Or practicing self-care, like what can you find to do on your way to work? Or when we talk about bringing meals and snacks, we try to talk about things that are quick and easy and portable. And it's geared specifically around how nurses and healthcare professionals work. There's not many professions. There are some where you go to work for 12 or 13 hours. And I mean, you are immersed in that. You can't do anything else. So what can you bring to set yourself up for success? I oftentimes say little things like when you go to get report, take 2 minutes and both of you do a little deep breathing. 2 minutes. It'll help the person going off. It'll help the person coming on. What can you put in the break room? Put a gratitude jar in there. Put little things. Have a vision board in the break. There's things that are pertinent to nursing. So I think that's the difference. And most importantly, it's a way for my clients to directly communicate with me. It's their quick way to send me a message and I can see it and get back to them. So that's how we really communicate throughout the program. Yeah.
I love it. I have 2 thoughts. My first being my son tells me to deep breathe when he sees me anxious or moving or like, we got to do this, we got to do that. And he goes, Mama, he's 3. He goes, Mama, deep breath. And
Yes.
it's so convicting to have a 3-year-old tell you to take a deep breath.
Yeah, you better take a deep breath.
I take a deep
What
breath.
a wonderful example you're setting for him.
Oh God, I hope so. I don't know if he's telling me to take a deep breath. I might not be, but
No.
but that is so funny. And then the second thing I thought is I so admire your career, that you're always looking for ways to help. You're always looking for ways to step in and bridge the gaps for people that are suffering. Either I don't understand what's going on around me and this is my healthcare and I can't understand and I need someone to translate what is being said to me about my body and what's going to happen to me. And now pivoting again into this space where you're helping serve healthcare providers who have been a little beat up in the last couple of years and have really felt like they've been kind of used and abused. And so to kind of step into that space, I think is very admirable.
Well, thank you. I feel like I've come full circle because with my health literacy and the communication component of that, I really worked with organizations and facilities and the leadership and to make it better for the patients or the clients that they were caring for. And now I'm caring for the healthcare workers and the nurses that are caring for the patients. So I feel like I've kind of come full circle.
Yeah, that's so neat. That's a good place to end it. Come in full circle. I feel like an Oprah moment. So, so for the last part of the interview, it's the rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
What are you most grateful for in the whole world?
My family.
And to you, what is the best age to be?
Right now. Whatever age I am right now, honestly, is the best age.
And last question is,
I guess that wasn't the right answer.
Yeah, I didn't like it. It was like glitching. Okay. So, and what is your favorite board game of all time? Do you play board games? I like board games. Do you play board games?
I mean, I'm not a board game person.
Oh, do you play like any type of games, like gestures or like apples to apples? Or no, you're not. Okay. Yep.
I am not.
Not at all. Okay, I'll switch it up.
Which my family continually, every time we were all together on vacation, I'm like, that's okay. I'll go read my book.
Oh, then that's my question. I was going to ask you, what are you reading right now?
Oh, right now, what am I reading? I have it downstairs. Bittersweet.
Bittersweet. I've seen that. What is that about?
It's the author, and her name is escaping me right now. She's the author of Quiet.
The book about introverts.
Introverts.
Yeah. Are you an introvert?
Conversation. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So she came out with this book, I guess, a couple of months ago, and I've just gotten around to starting that. So
I'll have to check it out. I loved Quiet. My husband is an introvert, so it gave me a lot of insight into like his world and giving him.
This is great. So
that's very cool. I'll check it out. Well, that's really neat to hear. Well, again, Terri, thank you for your time today. Thank you for coming onto the podcast and sharing your knowledge and your experience and your view.
Thank you. And thank you so much for what you do and you're giving back and sharing all these great guests that you always have. I've been following along. So thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it as well. And guys, check her out. If you're looking for coaching, I'll have all her links in my show notes. If you're looking for group coaching, do you do any individually coaching as well?
I do individual and small group. Yep.
Yeah, I saw that. So guys, have a wonderful day and don't forget to enjoy the journey of your career. Thanks for hanging out.
Take care. Bye-bye.